Hey everyone, here's a big tip to help you through the holiday season. Not every holiday has to be like the last. It's important to realize that as we talk about ways to manage our stress during the holidays, that we don't put unrealistic expectations on ourselves or on others. You see, we often expect that life changes in instances where we want to see our situations change for the better. But at the same time, we want things to remain exactly the same in many other respects. One of the ways that we set ourselves up actually for disappointment is when we expect that everything will always be the same when it comes to our family dynamics. I'm Sage Hill, and thank you once again for listening to the Social Sage podcast. We invite you to like this episode and also to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. So, we're talking about today ways to reduce stress during the holidays. And this is going to be a topic that I am going to be talking about from now through the month of January. And although I'm not going to be talking about it every single episode, I am going to be talking about it a lot. And we're going to focus on ways that you can preserve your mental health, you can reduce stress, and most importantly, preserve your soul's peace during these holiday seasons. As I stated before, it is so easy for us to fall into these patterns of thinking that we actually can break. We can break any pattern. We can break them. We have the power to do that. But I've realized over the years that many of these patterns that we have, these expectations that we have of others, often come from a place and a time in our lives where we really had very little control. I'm talking about going back to that time when we were children and we remember things happening in a very specific and predictable way. Holiday times were times where we would come together as an extended family. And in many instances, we would see our cousins, our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents, our parents, everyone coming together to celebrate. We had traditions like the kids' table or a specific location in the house where all the kids sat. And at a certain point in time when you graduated to be able to sit with the adults, those were the times that you really looked forward to. But you also treasured the time that you had an opportunity to play with your cousins and to just have fun. And how we watched the adults, waiting to get to that stage in our lives where we could be participating in some of the activities that they participated in. Yet now we're adults. Yet we have so many of those same expectations that we had when we were children. And let's be honest, things have changed. Times have changed. We're still in the midst of a pandemic situation wherein we have a virus that is still running rampant. And even though there are not as many reports, we certainly don't have that daily ticker on the bottom or the tops of our television screens letting us know how many people have died. Trust and believe COVID is still real. It's still affecting people. People still get sick if they don't exercise the appropriate precautions before they go around other people to make sure they're not contagious, or putting yourself in a situation where you're around people that have a high propensity to get sick if they're around other people that could be carrying the virus. The same thing for colds and flu. Those things are not things that anyone really wants to experience. And so as a result of that, you see this kind of changing dynamic in the way that our families get together. And some of us will do it anyway. We just try to maybe socially distance a little bit more. Maybe we're wearing masks. Maybe we just throw caution to the wind and say, hey, we're going to hope for the best. But it is something that is still a part of this new society that we're living in, wherein we have to be very mindful of the fact that we may be around people in our families that have other health conditions that have compromised their immunity systems and their ability to fight off colds and flus and COVID type viruses. We have to be mindful of the elderly people in our family, especially because of the pandemic. But all of those things aside, we have to understand that things change. Just like we want people to understand that we evolve and change as individuals and as human beings, we have to understand that situations change and times change. Not everyone is still around with us. Many of us have lost a parent or parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles and cousins. We've lost people over time. And that is a fact of life. We won't all be here forever. But yet when we lose individuals in our families who may have been the ones who were primarily taking on the responsibility for bringing everyone together, it's as if we think that somehow these things are supposed to still continue to happen by osmosis. Someone has to raise their hand and say, I'm next. I'll be the one who takes on this task of getting everyone together. I'll be the one who volunteers my home. Or if you live in an apartment complex or a housing community where you have a clubhouse, I'll be the one that sets that up so that we have a place to come together. But most of us, unfortunately, aren't willing to do that. We sit back and we reminisce on how things used to be, and we find ourselves getting a little bit sad when we get towards this time of year where we're accustomed to coming together as a much larger family. But this is an opportunity to establish new traditions. We can hold dear those traditions that we grew up with. And we can even repeat those traditions. We can continue many of the traditions that we have, but we may have to reshape them in a way that is more conducive with today's environment, with the realities that we're facing in many of our communities when it comes to making sure that our families and loved ones are going to be safe from, being exposed to any type of a virus or a bacterial infection, anything that can make them sick. We have to be willing to think about new ways that we can share time with each other during the holidays. And it may not look exactly the way that it did when you were a child. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, when I was a child, I thought as a child. We're not children anymore. And so we have to change the way that we think. We have to embrace those memories, but we have to understand that as time changes and as people pass, we have an obligation, if we're really going to be honest with each other, to make a decision. Are we going to regret the past? Meaning we recognize those memories, but we're really living in regret because we can no longer experience the same exact thing that we experienced 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years ago. We can't get caught up in this cycle of expecting that life is going to stay the same in the areas that we desire it to stay the same in, but yet we expect that life goes on and moves on and changes and evolves over time. We have so many opportunities to do things together as family that may look totally different than it did in years past. Maybe you're experiencing smaller gatherings for meals and for enjoying each other through bringing food to the table and sharing a meal with everyone. Maybe that's changed. Maybe you're spending time more with your immediate family, those in your household, and maybe a few friends that may come over and you guys share a meal together. But that doesn't mean you can't still come together as a family. You can come together and bring people from all across the country together in one place just by doing a Zoom. You can leverage technology to bring your family together, and you can play games over Zoom, and you can have a really well organized hour or two get together with your family, wherein everyone gets an opportunity to share and, to reminisce together. You can use the breakout rooms feature to break out into smaller groups if you want to play different games, or if you want to have a one-on-one conversation with someone. Maybe that's a good time to air out some of your grievances that you've held on to for so many years. But that is just one of the ways that we can still come together as a family. In many instances, and certainly in certain parts of the country where it's not extremely cold during the winter, there are so many wintertime activities. There are Christmas lighting events that you can go and see. And someone could say, hey, let's all get together and let's meet here. Let's dress warm. Let's, if you can bring thermoses of hot chocolate or whatever your favorite warm beverage is together, and you guys can get together and enjoy being together as a family. But maybe it looks different. Maybe you're walking through the Christmas lights together and enjoying that Christmas light show together. Maybe you have train rides in your community that take you on rides where you see the different lights and you get to experience that. Maybe you have a particular area of your city that decorates things and you walk through that. Here in Atlanta, we have the Botanical Gardens, and their light show is absolutely phenomenal. We also have Six Flags, wherein they decorate things and you can walk through that holiday wonderland. We have a drive-through holiday light show. There are so many different things that you can do as a family and still spend time together. Maybe, just maybe you decide that you're going to have something after the major dinner, right? So you still want to be able to get together, but it's not as taxing on everyone to be bringing food together. You have your meal in your more, your smaller family circle, but maybe someone says, let's I'll host this event for a couple of hours. Maybe you get together between 6 and 8 when everyone has had an opportunity to eat their dinner and relax, or, maybe a little earlier, maybe between 5 and 8, but you set aside 2 or 3 hours where you all get together and maybe you just have dessert, or you just get together and play games or talk and enjoy that time together. It's still time shared, but it looks a little bit different. And sometimes we have to be willing to say, my family is not perfect. And there are certain individuals and certain situations that I know I would rather live without. But I'm going to make the decision this year to start thinking about family a little bit differently, to allow everyone the opportunity to be their authentic selves, understanding that none of us are perfect. And perhaps I'm going to be the one that extends an olive branch. I'm going to at least try. I'm going to try to see things from a different perspective. I'm going to try to relinquish some of the disappointment and the anger and the grief and the sadness, all of those things that have been holding you captive for so long. Look, I'll be the first to say that there are times that you really do have to step back and perhaps even step away when you are involved in a toxic family situation. But then there are instances and times where perhaps having a conversation is what is needed. And if you can't come to an agreement, you can at least agree to disagree without being disagreeable. And if that fails, and the situation is still presenting itself to you in a way that is not being mindful of you and your feelings, if it's not a situation where you feel that you're being respected or heard, if it's a situation where you feel that your peace is being threatened or you're going to be triggered, although being triggered does not mean that that is a green light for reacting in a manner that is not befitting of who you are or who you are becoming as an individual. We all own our triggers. We all know what they are. And so we owe ourselves the responsibility of appropriately responding. And sometimes that response is not to even allow yourself to be in that situation to begin with. So while there are times, and you'll see in one of my earlier episodes where I talk about dealing with toxic family situations, there are times that you just have to step away. But I would be willing to bet that there are more times than not that having a conversation and that letting go of unrealistic expectations based on memories that we hold from childhood and somehow expect that we're going to have those same feelings that we felt as children during the holiday seasons are not necessarily realistic at this stage of the game, because time has indeed changed. People have changed. People that we knew and loved so deeply are no longer here. And we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with those things. And we also have to be okay with the fact that we feel sad, that we experience feelings of sadness when we look back and we remember those people that we love so much that are no longer with us. But we have to realize that that is life. They're not going to be able to be with us always. And that is why it's all the more important that we set aside time to remember, yes, but we also begin to establish new traditions, new ways of sharing with our families. And even if you share with a portion of your family, just a portion, if you can't get everyone together in one place, it's okay. Maybe you can get them together virtually. And if the situation is so intolerable for you that that is not possible, what is possible is that you can shape what your holiday season looks like and feels like by establishing your own traditions. It can be as simple as saying, hey, you guys, let's get together. Let's make it a point that maybe every Christmas we're going to go to the movie theater. We're going to go watch a movie together. Maybe it's going to see Christmas lights on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Maybe you establish a tradition where you get together just before or just after the actual holiday, because maybe you just really need to spend that time with your immediate family and rest and relax. Or maybe you're in a position where you really can't be around a lot of people because you have some sort of a compromise to your immune system. It's okay. We're living in a totally different time. And we have to be able to adapt to the times in which we're in. And the sooner that we begin to acknowledge and accept that things just don't stay the same forever, and that we have a responsibility to think of new ways that we can celebrate the holidays, that we can establish new traditions and new ways of doing things while still holding on to some of those cherished and treasured holiday traditions that we recollect so well and perhaps even want our children to experience. We all have a say in it. We can't just always sit back and wait on others to do what we know they probably won't. And if we fall into the category of being the one that says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to send this out, I'm going to get everyone together. And yes, it may be irritating that no one else thinks about doing it but you. But if you do it and the end result makes everyone happy, including yourself, isn't that worth it? I really encourage you to seriously think about how you want to experience the holidays. And this is the last point that I'll make. We can't choose our family, but our families aren't always those people that are related to us by blood. We can choose the people that we allow into our lives, our friends, who often sometimes become more of a family member to us than even our own family really is. Perhaps you live in a totally different city and you can't make it home, but you can create home where you are. And you can begin to choose the people that you want to spend time with. And you can establish new traditions. And you can enjoy a stress-free holiday season. I'm Sage Hill. Thank you for listening to the Social Sage Podcast. And as always, it's been a pleasure, my treasures. Have a great holiday. Thank you.